Hi, my name is Max, and I see a lot of videos on YouTube explaining S-Log and video camera technology, and a lot of them drive me nuts, especially the S-Log stuff. And I keep wanting to do a video that explains RAW and all this stuff, and I just don't have the time. But now I figure I'm just do a ranting video that explains a lot of what the problems that I see, and that I hope helps you not make the mistakes I've made when first trying some of this S-Log stuff. So this is going to be long, and I need to start from the beginning so that you understand this, because this is a problem with a lot of people explaining it, is they don't understand, I believe, many of the steps that go along, the challenges that the camera manufacturers have and how they handle them, and how we have the world that we have today, where we have now S-Logs. We should really have RAW, but we don't. Whole other story. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. Okay, so when manufacturers first start to make digital cameras, the first thing that they want to do, that anybody would want to do, is you take a sensor and you take a picture of the scene, right? Once you expose it correctly, and you take all that information, right, and you put it in a card, and then you watch it on your TV, right? I mean, that's a perfect world. That's what everybody wants, but they can't do it because the electronics, even today, when they process that raw data, they get too hot, it's too much energy, too much storage, it's just too much money, right? Because you can't get these cameras today, they're just very expensive. So for consumers, they need to come out with cameras that have the power requirements that they can make the batteries and make the sensors and make these cameras to come out, right? It's like the Sony A7 here, right? I mean, they need to make it this size, with this battery, whatever, right? So in order to do that, they have to compress the image, okay, to work on a camera that you can carry around that doesn't have a huge, large battery. So there are a few things that there are many things, actually, many things, little technological tricks that they've done to give the best possible image that you can get from your camera, right? That isn't, that you can't tell the difference between it and again, the perfect world where you're shooting RAW. So the first thing that they do, right, is that they compress each image, each frame, right, and then they see if there's not a difference between each frame, then they won't compress. They won't keep compressing. Let's just say the same white background. They'll just be the same. They'll only do the differences each time, right? So this is one way that they do to save bandwidth. The second thing they do to save bandwidth is that even though the sensor will capture 14 bits per pixel, right, even though it will capture a ton of information, they just quickly compress it and throw it all away, right? They don't try and capture it all because, again, too much energy. So they just throw it all away. So they take 14 bits from each sensor, and actually that would equal 3 times 42 bits, right? They take 42 bits and they chuck everything out except 24 bits. And then they write those 24 bits, or 8 bits per color channel, onto your card. They do the interframe compression, all this stuff. You get a great image, right? The other thing they do in the sensors, they're more green pixels because we have more acuity to green than to colors, and actually we notice sharpness more than we do for color differences. And because the image is moving around a lot, who cares if it's all pixelated when you move? You can't really tell. Okay. So again, to sum up, cameras are the way they are today, and from when they're first designed, because still today we don't have the processors or the technology to deal with raw video on a consumer equipment. So the image that comes from the sensor that goes to your video file is highly compressed, and lots of tricks are played to get it to look good to you, right? Okay. So what's happened is, because they have not been able to make these cameras work in RAW, and let me say they can. You can get a Blackmagic, but what was the first complaint about Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera? It doesn't last long enough. Why? Because a lot of the battery power was to cool the sensor. The sensor gets hot. Again, heat, and energy is what separates you from great video. Anyway, so you get Magic Lantern for the Canon and shoot RAW, but again, it gets hot. And it's a lot of bandwidth and a lot of storage and whatever. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm drifting. Let me get back to the S-Logs. Okay, so what the camera manufacturers have done is said, okay, if you're in a room, even just like you're seeing me now, right, you want to get, right, where white looks white and black looks black. And you can see a constant, like, dynamic range between those, right? And also that your colors, again, you're not going to see black and white, that your colors from the, from the yellow to the deepest yellow or red to the deepest red, all the colors, and again, their spectrum, which would be, right, more like this, that for each value of this gray, that these colors here are also accurate, right? That's what you want, right? In the end, that's what we all want, right? We want something that looks natural. Okay, but the problem is that, again, remember I told you how we compress everything down? So visually, we can see about 12 million values of light. All right, so it just made it 16 million, and 16 million happens to be 24 bits. So they figured, which is true, like if you look on your screen, that with 24 bits of color information, you can do all the information that you can possibly see. So they even show you colors on your screen that are beyond 24 bits. You won't see them either be too bright or too dark. Your visual range is within those 16 million colors, right? You can't see anything darker, you can't see anything lighter, right? It's right between here, right? What you can see. However, it always assumes that you're getting a perfect exposure, that your perfect exposure is between dark and light, right? Because anything beyond it, again, you can't see. But the thing that people who do S-Log don't really understand is that the camera actually can record beyond it in either direction. It can record more of dark and more of light. But the thing is that, keep in mind that there is no true thing as absolute color. All visual stuff we see is relative within itself. It's its own world within itself. There's no such thing as this white paper. This paper is only shown at this brightness because this video camera, this equipment right now, this stupid-ass camcorder, is choosing to show it at this brightness. And if I put it into my video editor, I can choose this brightness. There's no, like, factual brightness. The camera's not recording saying, this is exactly 3 lux bright or whatever. It's not. You interpret that. The camera interprets that. I mean, there are absolute values out in life, but there's no, it's you just, the equipment or you figures it out. So you have to keep that in mind, because let's just say that this is, all of a sudden I turn on some bright light. Again, I'm not really prepared in this video, but, okay, I'm showing it now pointing outside, right? It's really bright. Or let's just use, this thing again, right? So right now you can see it exposed, and I turn towards the window, right? And now you can't see it, right? It's like too much reflection. But if we're shooting RAW, the camera can actually, we could take that data that's now too bright. Again, right now it's being squeezed into the 24-bit space, so you see all the shine, you can't really see it well. But if it was RAW, we'd have this data, and we could reduce the exposure artificially, and then it would look like this, right? Because again, that's the beauty. The camera takes visual information beyond what our eyes can see, and later on, we can reinterpret that within our visual space, so it looks normal to us. Because there is no normal. Again, everything you see, arbitrary. You see the equipment and whatever, based on what we expect to see is a good image that they scientifically study and all this other crap, right? Okay, so again, this is what you want to see. So because they couldn't deliver raw technology right now to our cameras, which is what we all really want, trust me, we want all the original data, right? Who wants to throw anything out, right? Why would you want to throw out data? Nobody wants to throw out data. Believe me, right? You want the original stuff. Because we can't throw out data with consumer cameras, right? And even in professional cameras, because of the workflow and the speed of the computers, even though you can get a camera that shoots RAW, right? You get Blackmagic, right? Your editor now has to have a freaking computer that's going to deal with, this 4 gigabytes per minute footage, right? So that takes time. You have all these big hard drives. So everything about RAW takes a lot of energy and storage, and it's expensive and time-consuming. So again, everybody wants to work with 8-bit. Everybody wants to work with the smallest files possible, right? Because we have lives to live, right? Okay. So we want to have time for the red carpet. So, all right. So, how did S-Log happen? because many scenes in real life, or when people go out to shoot, are not like this where they're evenly lit. They're lit in a problem that puts the person between a rock and a hard place. So if I turn my camera here, right, you're now seeing me and the window, right? And see how like the camera will say, okay, I'm going to expose now for your face, and now look, I'm going to expose for the outside, but when I'm exposed for the outside, I'm all dark, right? You see how it's going back and forth, right? So let's just say that, so you're shooting this, and now again, in raw data, it's not perfect. Again, raw has its problems too, because the limitations of the equipment, whole other story. But anyway, at least in RAW, you could balance the image more because you have all the data from the sensor. But in 8-bit, again, 8-bit assumes that you're putting right into the exact dynamic range that you can see. Everything else is thrown out. So if you want to get the clouds, let's just say, right, that you're shooting this, like I want to see the outside because I want the person watching my video to know Max is in an office and he wants to see these buildings across the street. We don't want to think, like, to say he's in a studio and there's just bright lights behind that window. So if you shoot in the cameras the regular way, it's going to be blown out because the camera is adjusted to say, okay, we're going to get middle gray right in here, and this is too bright, so we're just throwing it out. But what if you say, I don't care about the colors in middle gray. Let's just say I don't care about all the colors in like this orange color that much. I want you to throw out some of this orange color, right? That's lower in the light, so you can pick up some of the differences to see the clouds and the light out there. I want you to move this dynamic range, take part of it, just only use a little bit of data to capture that. So you can throw out some color data and move that data over there to capture some of the data here, so I can get the contrast. I can see out that window. So that's why you have that S-log. So you're basically saying, okay, sort of expose this properly, but don't expose this properly, but later in I'll go and fill in the color. And it works well for what it does, but it's still not as good as this image right here. My face, my skin tones, this shirt will not look as good as it would normally. But again, you're making a trade-off. You're making an aesthetic decision. So S-log can only be used when you know aesthetically why you want to make a certain trade-off for your image. And if you don't know that, if you don't understand what you're throwing off, and you used S-log in a situation like this, you're actually going to get a bad image. Why? Again, because the camera is already made with existing stuff to get this perfect, this range of values perfectly. So if you take a bunch and you put it up here, what good is it up here? If you're getting a lot more of information on the wall from your S-log, who cares? It's white. You know, it's not that bright. We don't care, right? You're not taking information, the color information from my shirt here, my skin, just so you can get better detail on the wall. Who gives a crap, right? Nobody does. That's why you want to use S-log in a normally exposure dynamic range situation. You'd only use it in a challenging situation where you either want to pull out the shadows or you want to get, the highlights, some contrast in there. So to recap all this, oh my God, I'm already at 13 minutes. Number one, what you want is raw. Two, you can't get raw because the equipment is limited. Just the physics of electronics in this day and age. Three, aesthetically, sometimes you want to make a decision with your image where you want to change an optimal setting of the camera of how it's going to record a scene so that you can get a sort of tell a visual story, get some visual information in there that you want, that you don't mind making the trade-off. But you have to understand that trade-off. There's no free lunch. S-logs do not increase dynamic range, do not increase the visual information. They only change where you want, how much detail you want on that spectrum. Okay, I think at 14 minutes that's probably enough. Rant over. Hopefully one day I want to do like a really in-depth video about RAW, how it works, how these sensors work, how the data moves from the sensor to the analog digital converter into the codec, what grading is. But another day. Thanks for watching.